Hi, welcome to another episode of A Critic's Journey. And like I said, sometimes with this show, I'm going to go back and take a look at some films that I'm watching because of something that is about to come out. And that's certainly the case with today's episode, where I'm going back to have a look at a film that came out way back in 2001 with Jeepers Creepers. And the reason I'm taking a look at that is because Monster Pictures have Jeepers Creepers Reborn coming out this week. Very, very exclusive screenings. I think in my local area, there's only 3 screenings over 3 nights. So make sure you check out when Monster Pictures have got them screening. So I decided that I was going to sit down and watch all of the Jeepers Creepers films before the new one comes out. They were films I think I'd all seen before, except for number 3. I don't remember seeing number 3. This was, I think, my first time I'd watched it. But we're going right back right now to the original Jeepers Creepers film. And I'd forgotten what an interesting film this is, because it's an interesting film in the sense that a majority of this film takes place either on the road or in a car. It centers around a brother-sister duo of Trish, played by Gina Phillips, and Darry, played by Justin Long, who of course went on to bigger and better things with his career. But this is still considered one of those films that a lot of people remember him for. It's funny because, of course, when I think of Justin Long these days, I think of him with his comedic kind of roles, whereas this one, there's no comedy at all. In fact, it's not even a Sean William Scott serious role where there's hints of comedy. It's pure horror, thriller / drama. Now, so this brother and sister are coming home from college. They come across a really weird truck that tries to run them off the road, and then later on they witness the driver of that truck throwing what looks like a body down a kind of drain tube thing at the back of a church, and they go back to take a look at what's happening, and they find something horrific. Now, this is the first introduction we get to this creature called the Creeper, played by Jonathan Breck. And I won't go into too much talking about the Creeper folklore in this episode, because for people out there who I know listen to this and then go and watch the film, and I know a lot of younger film lovers go out and have watched that film for the first time. So I don't want to spoil it for you right now by saying too much about the Creeper, in case. So what I'll do is, in this episode, I'll just keep to kind of what we see in this film and how I found the film. And then in the next 2 episodes, I'll go more into the Creeper folklore, because that'll give you a chance out there to all sit down and watch the first film. Now, this is, to me, a film that turned out to be a lot better than I remembered. I really enjoyed going back and revisiting this film just because of how simple it is. It's from director, screenwriter Victor Salva, who hadn't really done much of note up until that point. This was the film that kind of put him on the map, but even though it had studio backing, it feels like an indie film. It feels like the horror films that we see indie filmmakers making these days. And I think that adds a wonderful element to the film. For a lot of this movie, it is Trish and Darry versus the Creeper. We do see other characters come into the film a little bit later on, but yeah, for the first probably almost half of this film, it is just the brother and sister versus the Creeper, which puts a lot of pressure onto Gina Phillips and Justin Long as actors, and they're smart enough to pull it off. Now, I think one of the really interesting things about this film is that Victor Salva kind of goes against a lot of the horror tropes that we see in other horror films around at this time. The first notable one being that he makes the lead characters, Trish and Darry, brother and sister rather than boyfriend girlfriend. There's a John Carpenter-esque feel to this film. I'll say that even the character of the Creeper has a real John Carpenter feel to it, and I think even John Carpenter probably would have made these two boyfriend girlfriend to bring in that little bit of titillation of sexual tension. But Victor Salva does the opposite. He's been quoted to have said that the reason that he made them brother and sister was to get rid of that sexual tension that could have been there between the characters. So to me, this film almost has more of a focus on the Creeper, in a sense, that Salva wanted to make this movie a film that looked more at horror rather than the human characters, in a sense, which sounds strange considering how much they are on screen. But the other thing that I find interesting with that is another film that came out around the same time that I absolutely love, is a film that here it was called Roadkill. I believe it was called Joyride in America because of some legal issues around a case or something. But that starred Lily Sabowski and Paul Walker. And one of the things about that film is that there is sexual tension in that film. And you could argue that it heightens the film, but you could also argue that at times it takes the story away from the horror element because it has to play that kind of romance game as well. So I kind of like that with Jeepers Creepers. We don't have that element there. We don't have that element of will they, won't they kind of thing. This is the story of a folklore and two people facing that folklore. The horror in this is pretty good. When you consider that they were working with a limited budget, you don't see as much of the Creeper as you do in other movies, but what you do see is pretty impressive. And like I said, it's just really, really creative that Salva's script mainly keeps most of the action with this film on the road or in a car. There is scenes later on in a police station and in a diner and outside someone's house, and they all work perfectly well. But I love the fact that a lot of the suspense of this film comes from that kind of road/car element that really plays into the hand of the indie kind of filmmaking feeling here. It reminds me also of another film that I love, another film that comes out around this time, Forsaken, the Desert Vampires, which does a similar thing. A lot of that film, even though it's a vampire horror, is set in a car, and that works amazingly well as well. So, look, go out and start this Jeepers Creepers journey by watching the first film leading up to the release of it. You certainly won't be disappointed. Like I said, I loved going back and watching this. That indie vibe just makes this feel something really, really special. I'm going to give it 3 out of 5. I think there was room to improve with this film, but 3 out of 5 for the original Jeepers Creepers, and start the journey right now because I'm going to be taking a look at number 2 and 3 over the next couple of days as well. But 3 out of 5 for the first Jeepers Creepers.